Can you tell if these photos were shot at home with an old iPhone and cost under $100 to set up, or in a studio with equipment costing tens of thousands? Today, I'm going to demonstrate exactly how these photos were taken. Let's get started. We're going to create what's called a seamless background, and because it's going to be small products, I'm going to use just a small piece of cardboard. You can use a sheet of paper, smaller or larger size depending on the product. Basically, we're trying to create something that's going to go along a 90-degree edge in a smooth curve. I could prop up a book or a shelf or something, say right here up against the wall. Using masking tape, I could put this over here, bring it up against the wall, and basically I'm going to tape it to create this gentle transition from the vertical wall to the horizontal surface where we're going to place our product. This is a common technique used in all studios to get really catalog quality photography. In my case, instead of using a wall, I'm going to use a small table, and I'm going to use one of these. They're called an auto pole. It's an adjustable pole that you can simply adjust the length of and then lock in place. And what that does is squeeze between the floor and the ceiling and let you put a vertical post anywhere you want in the room. And the reason I'm going to do that is simply for convenience, so I can show you a few things. This is not necessary to get the effect. You can do it really simply if you'd like, using some kind of vertical support and a horizontal surface. You can do it in the middle of a table, middle of a room, against the wall, wherever you want. Try it with something simple first. And then once you get the feel for it, you can go to a little more complex setup. So I'm going to use this pole, set it up behind the table, vertically secure it in place, and now it stays put. And the reason I like this is it allows me to clamp on a bunch of accessories wherever I want for convenience. So there's these little clamps available. You can use them to attach all sorts of things. So I'm going to set up this horizontal bar on it. Okay. And then I have a couple of wood pieces on here that I can use to hold the cardboard. So I can mount it like this. And this way I can adjust the height, adjust the curvature if I'd like. Anyone, any age can set this up, and you can get shots that look like they came out of professional catalogs. In fact, I have my young kids with me here following along, so as I teach you how to do it, they can learn too. Anyway, see this curve? It's pretty much a large radius coming all the way to the tip. That's what you do not, at least for what I'm going to show you, we don't want that. We want to have more of a horizontal surface, have a little depth to it, and then curve up, go to the vertical. Depending on the size of your product, you might want a bigger sheet and have a bigger vertical space in the background. In the end, we're going to kind of zoom in into this small area where we're working. Okay? So to get that, I have to bring this bar down a little bit. Let's say about there. And then just using simple clamps, I can just kind of clamp this in place on both sides. Does that look about even?
On both sides?
Just like the curve, does it seem kind of even? Doesn't have to be, because you'll get different effects depending on how you do it. So we have a little bit of a curve there. You can use masking tape. It comes in all sorts of colors, so pretty easy to hide it and not have it obvious if it's in an area where you're working. Or you can use what's called gaffer's tape. This is actually really good. It's kind of like a fabric base, really strong, easy to tear, and comes in a few colors, including white and grays and blacks. It's very strong, and it peels off clean, doesn't leave any residue. So that's actually something useful if you're going to do a lot of photography. It's worth getting a roll or two of that. Here, I'm going to tape it to my table here. Put a piece over there, just to kind of hold it down and remove this piece of masking tape. So that's our basic setup. And the term used for this is a seamless background. The idea is we're going from horizontal to vertical in a seamless way without any joint here. A lot of people, what they do is they try to have a horizontal surface, and let's say they're trying to take photographs against white, and they'll put a vertical piece of white paper here, and white here, or cardboard, or some kind of stiff material, and they'll struggle trying to get a nice look. That's because this edge over here, you'll never be able to hide that in your pictures, no matter what you do, unless that's the look you're going for. To get rid of this edge and create this feeling of depth, you have to use a seamless background. Okay? In addition to this, actually, let me ask you a question. What's the most important thing to get good pictures?
A camera.
So if you want really good pictures,
Well, you need a camera to take the pictures.
yeah, so you want really good pictures. You're like, oh, my pictures are horrible. They don't come out good. What's the first thing most people think they should do?
Get a better camera.
That's the first thing. That's the most common thing people do. They'll go out and they'll buy an expensive camera and think that's going to get them better pictures. Mm-hmm. That's the most common thing everybody thinks, is if the pictures aren't good enough, the camera's not good enough. So people keep purchasing cameras, and every time they think, oh, my camera's still not good enough. And you can spend thousands, you can spend tens of thousands on cameras and still get pictures that are just as bad as when you started, sometimes worse. Because usually the more expensive cameras, they require some understanding of knowing how to use them. Starting with the camera is actually the wrong approach. If you want great photography, what do you think is the most important thing you need to get right? The clue's in the name. What does photography mean? What do you think photo means, the word photo?
The capturing of light.
Yeah. Photo, the root word photo is actually, it stands for light. Getting the lighting right will change your results more than anything, more than any camera you could possibly purchase. If you don't get the light right, you won't have any good pictures. All right. So for lights, we're going to use 3 of these small LED lights. These ones happen to be made by a company called Newer. These are little small LED lights, and they're powered by rechargeable batteries. The brightness on them is adjustable. And they're easy to mount wherever you want. And just like the cardboard, the simple way to do this is just prop these up wherever you want. So let's say we're going to put our object in the middle. We can set up lights, and you can just set up on the table. Or if you want to have a little more control over these, use something to prop them up in different positions. So you can use books, you can use some kind of, you can tape them to something, hang them from something. In our case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 3 of these lights, and I'm going to mount them. I'm going to screw them on to these adjustable arms. These allow me to adjust the angle and position, so I can kind of position these wherever I want. This is not necessary, but it makes life way easier. I'm going to use a total of 3 lights, and that's really one of the most common setups. It's called a 3-point light setup, and I would recommend you start with 3 as well. You can get by with 1 or 2, but you'll have a lot more control on shaping the light around your object if you use 3. I'm going to use one of these arms to clamp one above. So I'm going to screw this on. One of the things you can get for these lights are these, they're called color gels, and they can be added in front of the light. So by itself, let's say the light puts out a fairly daylight shade of white, but by adding this in front, we can tint it. Okay, so placing this in front, we can tint our light to a particular color. So you'll see a lot of different effects where people are coloring the light, and there are other ways to do it. This is an economical way. Some of these lights come with these colors. So simply by adding that and adjusting how much is on there, you can create some interesting color effects. Just something to keep in mind. I'm going to mount one of these a little lower. And this will allow me to position the light, say, from the side, a little bit from the front of the product. One of the advantages of using these kinds of arms, adjustable arms or clamps, is as you get more serious about the photography, you're going to want to control the light and you're going to want to keep it exactly in the same position when you make fine adjustments. So if you prop these up on things, you don't necessarily have that level of control. And on my third light, the screw mount's actually broken, so I'm going to go ahead and prop it just like I'm telling you to do it. Okay. So 3 lights, and we're going to place our object in the middle. So for our example, what should we use? All right, we've got a few small products here, a remote, some perfume bottles, a remote, just to give you an idea. So let's start with, let's say this one, okay? The last thing I would recommend is get a tripod to hold your camera. Again, this is not necessary. Really, the only necessary things are a sheet of paper or cardboard that will create your seamless backdrop and 3 lights. These other things are for convenience and control. Having a tripod is going to give you convenience, just like the arms are for the lights, and it's going to give you control so you can take a shot, make an adjustment, take another shot, make an adjustment, take a shot without your setup constantly moving on you. Because that's pretty bad if you get close to something you like and then you make an adjustment, but your camera is in a different position every time. On this tripod, I'm going to mount a DSLR camera. And before you get all concerned that, oh, wait a minute, he said this was going to be something simple anyone can do with any camera, I'm just using that as an example on the tripod. But at the same time, when we get to the shots, I'm going to use a simple point and shoot, old iPhone and a new iPhone, just to give you a comparison and show you the camera makes almost no difference in your results. The lighting is what matters. What I'm going to do is position this so that it is in position for most of the shots. But I want to be able to bring in our other point and shoots right in front of it so I don't have to keep moving. One of the things you have to watch out for is, depending on how bright your room lights are, they're going to start casting shadows. So if you see some of the shadows on the paper right now, that's coming from the room lights. We don't want those to show up in our final shot. When you get really good at this, you're basically going to try to eliminate all those lights, or you're going to have these overpower those. So the result is not obvious in the final. I'm going to move this light out of the way for a second. We're going to do one light at a time. One light is used as your main light that lights up the majority of the product. The important detail here is the size of the light should be bigger than the product. Okay? And I need to clarify what I mean by that. By that, I mean the actual size of the light. So this, in this case, is the size of this light. And this is a very small light for most cases. So this is a small product, we can get away with it. As the product gets bigger, the light needs to get bigger. By bigger, I don't mean brighter. Okay, a lot of people are thinking, oh, that must mean a more powerful light, so more wattage. Yes, wattage is important, but I'm talking about the size of the light. Okay, and I'll explain that in other videos in more detail. For now, let's just keep it simple and say I'm referring to this rectangular size of the light. To see the effect of that, I'll show you basically why that is. Okay, when we have a light that is small and far away from the object, what I want you to do is watch the shadow that it creates. Okay? So the further away I go on this, notice that shadow. You see how it's harsh? Now you might not care, you might think, oh, that's one shadow. But there are actually hundreds of little shadows depending on your object. Okay? So if I have something like this or some other object, every little bump here is casting a shadow somewhere else. So you're getting harsh shadows. And that's one of the reasons pictures don't look professional. So we want to soften the shadows. And the way to do that is the size of the light needs to be so big that it basically is larger than the object and brought as close as possible without being in the frame. So look at how the shadow gets softer. The closer I come with this light, you notice how that shadow, it's not just that it's getting shorter, it's actually getting softer. Okay? To the point where when I'm this close, you see how soft that shadow appears? That's because the light, relative to the object, is pretty much covering the whole object and wrapping around. There's light hitting the shadow and taking it out. Okay? So this is one thing you must understand. I will try to explain it in more other videos. I'm going to try to keep this one short. So for now, I want you to bring your light in as close as you can and still be out of the frame of your camera. So this camera that's watching, so I can bring this light in close enough, but I can't have it in the shot. Okay, so I'll back it away and bring it as close as I can otherwise. Okay? All right. So back to this first light. I'm going to position this light close to our object and a little bit out of frame of the camera. Okay? And I'm lighting the object at an angle, getting the front, this side of it, top to bottom, and I still have a little bit of a shadow over here. This next light, that's on the table, I'm going to position and set to a lower brightness. Okay, so this is going to be just a small amount of light. And this is called a fill light. Again, I'm going to bring it close, but I'm going to watch if it comes in the frame of my shot, back away. And what I'm doing is I'm using it to fill the shadows and soften them. I'm not trying to get rid of them, I'm trying to soften them. To create a more three-dimensional look to your shot, you want the key light, the main light, to be usually at least twice as bright relative to your fill light. You can go twice as bright, 3 times as bright. Okay? And I'm going to prop this up using just a little spacer over here because the angle of this light is off. So it's going to brighten this up. And bring it over here. Now light it just a little bit. Okay? And again, I'm not trying to eliminate the shadows. All right. Now the third light. This third light can be used for multiple things. We're not going to use it to directly light our background. We're going to let the key lights, the main lights, fade away to shadow on the background, have this soft transition shadow. This third light we're going to use at an angle coming from behind, and we're going to use it to light the edge of our product. It's called a rim light. It's used just to put a highlight on the edge, and that causes the product to get separated from the background. Otherwise, it starts to blend in. Okay, so I'm going to position this way back here. This one can be further away. Okay, and I'm going to light that from behind, and we're going to adjust the brightness once we start shooting to see what that does. Okay. Now, before I continue, I'm going to take a few shots just to get my main idea dialed in over here. Just want to make sure we're focused. All right. You'll notice I'm getting shadows cast by the other lights in the room. You have two options. The best would be to turn off all the other light sources in your room. I need to keep those on to be able to show you what I'm doing. So I'm going to use option 2, which is to turn up the brightness of our lights until they overpower the other light sources in the room. This has to be done while maintaining the balance of the key light being the brightest, followed by the fill light, and then the rim light you can adjust independently of those two to create the effect you want. All right, so one of the things that's going to start happening is we're going to get every little piece of dust showing on the product. So to get rid of that, make sure you keep your objects nice and clean. It's easier to just have it clean to begin with than trying to Photoshop and touch up stuff later. Better to put a minute in up front and start with something fairly dust-free instead of having to fix that later. Okay. All right. So I want you to notice how here the whole scene looks right. See how this whole area looks just completely white? So when you look, you see the whole thing white and you're like, whoa, this is not what I want. But I want you to notice what the camera sees. The camera here doesn't see what your eyes see. These lights here are set to a brighter setting. The light from that is not actually reaching the background very well. So the background actually fades to shadow. In the shot, you see how the background actually goes to dark? And that's what this light is for. If we don't have this light, the dark of the product will blend in with the dark of the background. So we're going to use this, and I'm going to position it because it's still in my shot. So I'm going to have to adjust this a little bit. You have to experiment with these, and this is partly why it helps to have these adjustable tools to make your life a little easier. And what I might do is add a little color to this so you can see the edge highlighted separately. Okay? All right, so we've got a little bit of a setup here. All right, so there's our first photograph. As a starting point, it's starting to look pretty good already, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now, I'm going to take the same shot now, just to give you a comparison. I'm going to use an old iPhone here. This is an iPhone 6. And I'm going to bring this to the same kind of viewpoint here and take the shot. Okay. Now, I have these lights, because I didn't set this up. These lights are actually ending up in frames. So actually, let me move them away just a little bit out of frame here. All right, so I'm going to take the same shot with this old iPhone. Try to hold it steady. Hopefully it won't. Okay. Maybe take a vertical image. Okay. I'm going to take the same image with the latest iPhone 13 Pro. A lot of people find it surprising that these few simple steps achieve the results that they do. Nothing here that I'm showing you has been edited or tweaked or retouched in any way. These are actual photos direct out of these cameras without a single edit. When I first started photography, I remember being blown away when I learned this. And I'm going to try to take the same image using this point and shoot camera. All right, I'm going to take another image now. I'm going to turn this light off, the main light, and this light off. And I'm going to take an image just to show you this edge light caused by that third light. So for this, I'm going to use just this camera because those iPhones are going to try to, if I try to use this, it's going to try to recalculate. So if I take this photo with this phone, it's going to try to get a fully lit shot again, which I don't want. So I have this set to a manual mode right now, so it doesn't try to recalculate. It's still taking the same shot it took earlier. And basically, what I want you to see is this edge, the way it's being lit from the edge, okay? And I'm going to adjust that because I want that edge to actually try to catch more of the product on that side. Okay, so now I'm going to reposition this light. And this is something you actually want to do. You actually want to learn to control your light. Okay, see how it's starting to catch that edge? Now it's also landing on the surface here. So those adjustments you have to make to figure out, okay, I don't want it here, I do want it here. Adding a little color in. Now we've got a little color effect on the edge of our product. Okay, simple as that. And I'm adding that just so you can see where this edge light is hitting. Okay, it's a little detail. All right, let's just swap out a couple of products and we'll stop there for today. Okay, I'm going to put this in place. Just check to make sure we're focused here again. Right. Take the shot with this camera. Okay. And take the shot with the old iPhone. And with the new iPhone. All right, another quick little tip. Angling your shot creates a really dramatic look. So having a perfect vertical shot is one thing. Having just a subtle change of angle will add a lot of drama to your shot. So I'm going to do a couple of shots like that just to show you. And again, I'll show you with the old iPhone. Now just to give you an idea, these old iPhone 6s, they're going for how much these days? You can probably pick one up for 50 bucks, 100 bucks tops. When most people see images like this, they think it must require really expensive gear and years of experience. All right, lastly, let's do this. This is a larger object relative to our lights. So relative to the size of our lights, we're hitting the limit because this and this are approximately the same now. So if you go larger than this, we need to go to larger light.
So what would you do if your product was like the size of a person?
You need a light at least as big as a person, preferably bigger.
What if you are taking a picture of a person?
If you're taking a full-length picture of a person, meaning from top to bottom, their whole, their standing feet included, then you need a light preferably that big.
But what about...
Now this does not mean the light is crazy strong or something. Okay, the light can be just a soft light. But if you want...
people are doing product pictures of like the latest car or something?
Yeah.
Where they do have a seamless background.
That's a great question. They're basically doing the exact same thing we're doing, and they have a studio with lights that big. That's exactly what they're doing.
How can you have lights larger than a car?
It seems hard to do, but there are actually studios that have huge lighting setups, and they specialize in being able to photograph such large products like cars. Okay. Back to our... Okay, I'm not going to move this out to fit this. So we're going to just use that and call it good enough, just for sake of example. Just to fit it on this right now. I don't want to have to rechange the entire setup. I hope you're starting to see how similar the images are, regardless of which camera I'm using. The main point I want to drive home is that if you're still learning how to get quality photos, the camera is not the place to start. Just start with whatever camera you already have, and first learn how to light your scene. If you learn to control the lighting, you'll be able to work magic into your images. But if you just go out and buy more and more expensive camera gear and think that it's going to do the work for you, you're going to be continuously disappointed. Now, one of the things you'll notice if I get too far away, or if the object gets too big, our background, we're going to start losing it in the shot. It's going to be out of frame. We're going to start seeing other junk in the background. So if the object gets bigger, this seamless background has to get bigger. The lights have to get bigger. The idea remains exactly the same. The idea doesn't change. We'll stop there for today. That gives you a starting point, and we'll talk in further detail next time. Give these steps a try, and please tell me in the comments down below. Were you successful? Were you able to master some of these skills? And if you get stuck, please ask me in the questions. I'll try to answer the best I can. And if there's some things I'm not explaining well, maybe I'll try to do better in another video. I'll try to place links down below for some of the products I'm using. You don't have to use the same exact ones. There are many products out there that will achieve the same results. And if you find any of this information useful, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends and tell others. That really helps me continue making more videos like this. I wish you success with your efforts. See you next time. Peace.